Hi everyone, as you all know by now, my name is Ray. Tonight I'm going to be doing a YouTube video, a little bit of an extended one from the last one that I did, seeing as I have some help on the other side of the camera. Just a few things we need to know before we do any handling of any particular spider, whether it be a spider, a snake or any animal that possesses venom. Okay. Now remember, there is a difference between venoms and also poisons. Remember, venom is something that is injected either through a fang or through a barb or through a stinger. Something that is poisonous is a mushroom or even a frog that excretes a toxin. For example, like your toads excrete what we call, they have parotid glands, they excrete a toxin that gives a very bitter taste. So venom is a very fast way of entering the bloodstream, and it can cause you to have severe reactions such as localized swelling, blistering, pain, tingling sensation around the fingertips, the bite area. It can cause problems on your lungs, where you will show signs of cardiac, maybe or even on the heart, maybe a little bit of cardiac failure, depending on the type of species which you're going to handle. Okay. The species we're going to try and talk a little bit about today is your Theraphossidae family, or your tarantulas. Okay. Specifically, I breed with the genus poecilotheria. So I love my arboreal species. I'm not really that much into my terrestrials. I do have Monocentrophus balforis. I do have a couple of terrestrials, but we're not going to be speaking about them today. Getting back to the venoms, I worked for an extensive time with Professor Bill Branch, working in the field of herpetology, working with reptiles. Hence, you guys can see the tattoo on my arm is a representation of the 5.5 to 6 years working with reptiles. So I do know my venoms quite well. The difference between a bite from a spider and a snake, very simple. A tarantula has caused no human fatalities, but I always say there can always be a first time for everything. And it depends on so many factors if you get bitten. Your health. If you have fat, remember it takes a longer time for fat to move through the lymphatic tissue. Lymphatic tissue is a fatty layer that's stored under the skin, whether it travels through a muscle, through an artery. It always depends on those circumstances. How healthy you are. If you're very healthy, remember, you got less fat, faster, your blood flows faster. We call it perfusion. Keeping perfusion is always good. So if that is well, then you know obviously that you're going to go down very fast. Okay, people that have heart conditions, that are overweight, tend to store fat, and the venom tends to work its way through the fat then. It does affect the respiratory system. You're going to have complications with breathing, a numb sensation around the lips, etc. Ptosis. Very similar to snakes, very similar with some of your other arachnids, your scorpions for example. They will cause, the two things that they will specifically look for is one where you have complications with urinating, and also it affects the breathing. Now these two here, we've recently purchased, or actually not purchased, got them on a breeding loan. If you come a little bit closer here, you'll actually see this is the poecilotheria smithies, which is your yellow-backed ornamental. You can see the male moving to the left-hand side and the female is sitting on the right-hand side. Now the female knows the male is inside the enclosure. She knows very quickly the minute he's inside, the male will start drumming or tapping, and you can see she's starting to move a little bit slightly when she's inside. So the male will start drumming. If you come this side and you have a look at the male on the opposite side, you'll see the two pedipalps in the front. They look like small legs that are underdeveloped. Those are what we call mandibles, okay? Which similar to what your scorpions have. They use to manipulate food, to clean the fangs, etc. Males have palps. We call them lollipops. I call them horseshoes, because if you look at the end of a horse, if you look at the shoe, it sort of goes very far forward, and then it's obviously it's tapered to the back, so that it's obviously at a much higher position at the back. So once a male is matured after about 18 months, then he cannot molt anymore. Your female can molt for the next 10 years, 15 years, even 25 years, depending on the species. And him, unfortunately, his days are numbered as soon as he mates with a female. They do external mating, alright. He inserts, what he does is he spins a web. If we come along this side, you can actually see, I'm just going to open one of the cages. I'm going to be going from one cage to the next so that you guys can see. Alright, I'm just going to show you. If you just stand a little bit back, you can focus. Alright, if you guys have a look, this is a male. Alright, I'm just going to show you guys quickly as he moves to the front. Alright, okay, as he comes around, you can actually see he has a female right at the bottom. Alright, this is poecilotheria metallica, also known as your Guti's sapphire ornamental. They're called Guti sapphire because they come from a village in India, in Asia, where it's a small village called Gutis. They are critically endangered because of human encroachment. Their numbers and population sizes dwindle, but because of captivity and people in captivity that keep them in husbandry, in the zoos, in the pet trade, they've increased those numbers, and that is a good thing. Okay. So what we have here is we have the female. You can actually see she's a lot larger than the male. The male is also slightly discolored. I'm just going to get him to move up to the top. Alright, there's one thing I want to show you specifically with the male. Alright, you can see this is now also a very incorrect term which people use. Here we go. If you stand right at the front, you can actually see, look at the front there, can you see it looks like a horseshoe? And look at the back, can you see the abdomen is very, very small in comparison to the female, which is a lot larger, and she's much brighter in color. Alright, very defensive. I'm not going to stress her out. I am busy flooding the tanks at the moment. Just getting back to flooding of the tanks, you can actually see this is pretty much what my enclosures look like. The back temperature runs at about 20 degrees, and when I want to amplify the temperature and push it up into their monsoon season, which will push it up to about 29 to 30 degrees, her cycle kicks in. She thinks it's summer, it's active, all the insects come to life. Pretty much like every continent, when your summer comes, everything becomes alive. Your animals, your birds that migrate and then come back from where they've migrated from another warm region. So pretty much I flood it. I throw about 5 liters in, so it saturates into the peat and then lays a small layer just above the peat moss. So it pushes the humidity up to about 90%. Between 80, 85, 90, just over 90, 99%. It's always differing during the day and night time. I also spray on the side panels just to increase the humidity. So it's amazing to see actually how the female reacts. Just have a look here quickly. This male was introduced to this female just a couple of minutes ago. You can actually see how the male is actually drinking from the water. It looks like he's pushing his head completely down into the water. You can see he's drinking nicely, and look at how he looks compared to the female. This is your yellow-backed ornamental, also known as the poecilotheria smithies. Alright, this species we're not going to handle today. They just being introduced into the enclosure, so I'm not going to stress them out. That's the last thing that I want to do. I also use dubious roaches, or your orange spotted. They cannot climb glass surfaces, although I do have a cork bark at the back, and you can actually see he has a heat mat here. And a lot of guys talk about hot spots. Alright, it's usually the guys that do a lot of breeding with tarantulas. They believe heating up the whole room will actually be a much better thing for them, but that's actually incorrect, because maybe for a terrestrial species, yes, if the air temperature in the room is ambient everywhere, let's say 25 or 28 degrees and they get hot, let's say about 28 to 30 degrees, they can dig underground. If your peat is nice and deep, you'll go underneath. If you saturate, it's going to be nice and cool. But what about all your boreals? What do they do when it gets too hot? Okay, they cannot dig, cannot go up, so then the stress factor kicks in. Okay, that's how most problems happen with tarantulas. When they start stressing, they don't eat, they don't mold properly. There's so many complications when it comes to temperature. I give them the opportunity, same as a snake. It's called thermal regulation. The hot spot or the heat mat is placed at the back of the wall, and you'll see at night time the tarantulas will go on their own, sit on the heat mat, and when it's much cooler they'll move around to the top, in the front and the side. They'll move close, sometimes they're half on the back of the heat mat. That shows you and tells you with common sense that the tarantula is actually wanting that little bit of heat, and then it wants a little bit of cool. But if the whole room is warmed up, it's going to be a problem, and that is going to be a big stress factor on the snake, on the spider itself. Right, so thermal regulation is very important. Don't heat your whole room up. You can in summer times, depending where you're living, if it's snowing or if it's very, very cold, just push the temperature up slightly as long as you have the heat mat. And please, these silver heat mats, not the fiberglass ones. The fiberglass ones have been known to burnouts, people don't connect them regularly. I've been in the conservation industry for over 20 years. I've worked in national parks. I've pretty much worked with any animal you can think of. Spiders is one of my best hobbies for the last, let's say, 3 or 4 years. And I really enjoy it. As you can see, my enclosures, my tanks are very clean. I believe in clean husbandry. If you tend to keep your cages where all the feces stays behind, alright, and exuvians and all those types of things stay behind, it causes mites, parasites, isopods, everything. And that's why you always remove the peat, wash the peat, take the peat out, sterilize the cage, put the tarantula back in. Okay, there is some part of stress factors involved whenever handling any animal, especially tarantula. Remember, tarantulas can become very aggressive within the blink of an eye, and they can bite very quickly. This is not suggested to anybody to handle any tarantula. What I'm holding in my hand is actually what we call a tourniquet. Now, in a first aid or any medical course that you're going to do, I've got an advanced intermediate paramedic level, which means I've got a little bit more advanced training than your average first aider. Alright, I'm just going to show you quickly how it works. This is pretty much used for venomous snakes. There's only 2 snakes I will use this for. Okay, the purpose of a tourniquet is, you can see this is pretty much made of a tube, okay, which is of latex, right, and this is pretty much perspex with a groove on the inside. So what I do, I can place it there, bring it around, okay, I don't need anybody's help. As you can all see, run it nicely through the groove, and there's my tourniquet. Alright, you can see that is pretty much what we use, especially when it comes to a black mamba or a Cape cobra that has a neurotoxin that affects the nervous system very quickly and also affects the breathing. Alright, but for the average person, if you do get bitten by a snake or even by a spider, the best thing to do is put it under hot water because it breaks down the proteins, okay, or the peptides in the venom. Very different to snake venom. Snake venom you can't put under the tap. Under hot water, it's not going to break it down. Alright. Tourniquets, alright, the aim is just to slow the venom and to be released every few seconds to allow oxygen to travel through to the limb. Therefore, if you do restrict and you don't do that, it actually will cause oxygen deprivation to the tissue and cause the tissue to start dying. Okay, so necrosis will take place. The best thing to do, we call it proximal to distal. Okay, if you get bitten by a snake, whatever you do, puff adders, we don't use a pressure bandage because it causes deep vein thrombosis and compartment syndrome, where it causes swelling from inside the muscle, okay, and that causes pressure and excels necrosis if you put on a pressure bandage. Pressure bandage, usually for your cobras, mambas, you will do it, let's say I get bitten in the hand, I will take it all the way from the top, okay, this is called your proximal, this is called your distal. If you take it from distal and push it up, what are you actually doing? You're pushing the venom all the way up closer to your heart. You will take it from the opposite end of the limb and push it all the way down, tying the bandage nice and firm, and that keeps it nice and firm and keeps the venom down and slows it down. That's the main aim and main purpose you want to do, is to try and slow it down. Right, getting back to the tarantulas, you can see the male is moving around now. He's had a good drink of water. The female is inside. If she was going to do anything, she would have attacked him a long time ago. My camera person getting a bit tired. Okay, alright guys, if we move on a little bit closer quickly, some of the tools which we use when we're handling some of the tarantulas, which is very essential. This is pretty much a forceps. Most people call it a tongs. We that worked in the zoos before many years call it a forceps. Most people call it a tongs. We can use this to manipulate, usually to remove an egg sac from the tunnel, or for those who are really scared, can use the much longer one. Okay, so you can see the difference between the sizes. Alright. This is for old school breeders, and this is for people that's just starting out. Alright, but make no mistake, with any poecilotheria, they move extremely fast and they can jump within a few seconds onto your hand. It's happened to me numerous times. And just remember, there's no one that's an expert on working with tarantulas, or there's no one that can be better than the next person, because remember, we're living in a society where science is taking over. We're learning new things every single day of our lives. Okay, so it's all about a learning curve. I can just tell you my experiences when it comes to tarantulas and what I've experienced. Alright, there are different ways of sexing tarantulas. Some you can do by visual. especially with poecilotheria. This is a marking. If you have a look on the back, what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to take out my female Metallica, and I'm going to show you guys quickly what we call the folio pattern. Okay, the folio pattern pretty much disappears as the female becomes older and becomes a single dot. Males falls away completely and has a lot of hair on what we call the opisthothoma. That is the back section where the lungs, the book lungs and everything are. Remember, they've got an open respiratory system where the book lungs work. That's why they call it book lungs, because it's like pages. As they filter open, they take in oxygen, which is a direct form of oxygen. Remember, we take it in secondary because we've got to breathe it in and then go through our nasal cavities and into our passages and then into the lungs. Okay, and then it goes from arterial through to your veins. Alright, and that's how the oxygen goes. Alright, with these guys, I'm just going to take this out quickly. I've got a female inside here. The temperature is 32 degrees. It is a little bit warm inside. So let's just see how she is going to react. I need to take this off before I can actually lift the glass tank. Alright. Now, handling any tarantula, as I said, can be very, very dangerous, especially if you don't know what you're doing. And like all animals, they are unpredictable. Nobody can guarantee you what is going to happen. She can go into my arm, she can be there for 5 seconds, she can be there for 10 seconds, she can be there for 20 minutes, she can bite me at any given stage. Remember, tarantulas don't just use their fangs to protect themselves, they use it for injecting prey, to digest the prey, to break up the tissue, and obviously consume the fluids inside, which actually liquefies it. Alright, that's the main purpose. They also use the fangs to climb, to dig and excavate. So there's many purposes what the fangs are actually used for. Okay. We're going to try and coax the female out. This is just a brush which we use. Alright, so we're going to coax the female out nicely. Alright. She's coming around a little bit. She looks just a little bit. Okay. If you guys can have a look, you'll see she's a little bit. Just want to see what she's like. Alright, she's a. Alright, can you see the front leg? That's a warning. Alright, she's just telling me to back off. Okay, as I said, temperature plays a very big part in the behavior of the animal, especially for a tarantula. Lifting the legs is a warning sign if she goes up onto the rear legs. Alright, that's a direct threat. That means she's definitely going to bite. I'm not going to stress her out too much. I just want to see if I can get her out onto the glass and then see if she'll actually go onto my hand. Okay, what we're going to do, we're just going to see quickly if she's going to move. Alright, remember, tarantulas pretty much are one big bunch of nerves. They don't have hairs, they actually have bristles, hollow fibers that pick up temperature fluctuation, they pick up temperature change, so they're very advanced, these animals. Alright, they've been around since the beginning of time, and alright guys, I'm not gonna stress her out too much. I want to just see if she's even interested in climbing on my hand. Alright, we're going to see quickly what she wants to do. Alright, okay, we're just going to see. Alright, she moved just a little bit onto my hand. I'm not going to try and stress. I just want to move her to this side.